And we are going to talk more about this in this nice later part of this webinar. But if you can bear with me, I would like to stick with the focus on the filings first. This is the chart that show us the yearly filings from China, Vietnam, and the rest of the world. So we are seeing right now, China and India, the demand is so strong and with a lot of growth after the RIA as well. So I want to notice here that the fiscal year 2024 number is through the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year. And we are looking at the numbers from China and India. We have more filings in the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 2024 than the entire fiscal year 2023. So we are seeing a very strong growth in those markets as well. So Christine and Brandon, are you seeing the same trends when you talk to the investors from those two markets? People are still very excited about EB5 after the RIA, and what are the factors that make them so excited?
Absolutely. I think, China and India have historically always been the biggest markets, even, prior to retrogression. I think with the passage of the RIA, we're definitely seeing a resurgence of the same patterns. The same markets just came back. So I don't think it's any surprise. I also think it's a matter of what's available on the market really catering to those two countries. Certainly in fiscal year 2023, as we all started going, there was still a lot of high unemployment area projects that were legacies prior to the program lapse. And a lot of regional centers had to kind of pivot to find rural projects that kind of fit those definitions. I think we're all still trying to find an infrastructure project that meets those definitions. But you really saw those projects come out later in 2023 and through 2024. So I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of, these have always been the traditional markets where we've seen demand, and we've certainly seen that in that, but it's also the kind of product that's out there is catering to these markets.
How about your thoughts, Brian? Because of the concurrent violence, I heard that the markets in the US is actually growing pretty fast right now for EB5.
Yeah, absolutely. And this would be an interesting, I don't know, I don't think USCIS is organized or capable enough to provide this data, but maybe we should think about trying to do a FOIA request to see how many of all the 526Es are submitted, how many are submitted concurrently with an I-485 adjustment of status. I would suspect that the number for China and for India would be, well, for India, I would say probably 80% plus. I would say China probably 50 to 60% plus. So why do I say that? Well, let me start with India first. We talk about India, and people are probably looking at this and thinking, my gosh, especially on the regional center side, gosh, we've had one India filing all year. My India marketing team is terrible. What are they doing? And the answer is they're probably working hard. And the India market is really I look at it as 3 separate markets. See, this is based upon not where people live, but their country of chargeability, country of birth. And so the India market, I would estimate that less than 5% of this number are people that are actually in filing from India.
Wow.
Probably a good 10%, roughly, probably living in GCC states, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, countries in the Persian Gulf. And the vast majority are here in the United States on F1 student visas and H1Bs. Why? Because, sadly enough, if you graduate, even if you graduate with a 4.0 from, PhD program at Stanford, yeah, sure, you get, 3 years of STEM OPT. And yeah, you have a 50% chance of being selected in the H-1B cap lottery. That's pretty good. But if you don't, if you're just an undergrad, you have a 1 in 5 chance. And then what do you do if you don't get your H-1B after, by the time your optional practical training runs out? The options are not great. What if you get an H-1B and you go work for a tech company that is stopping green card processing? You have a real problem. What if they're still doing it and you get through it and have layoffs like a lot of tech companies are having? You have a big problem. What if you actually get a priority date? Well, chances are you're not going to live long enough to see it to become current to file your I-45 adjustment of status. simply the only solution for the vast majority of F1 and H1Bs chargeable to India is EB5. It's also similar to the China story as well. So I would say, the EB2 and EB3 situation for China is not as bad as India, but we're still looking at 5 to 10 years roughly. So, I've done several trips to China this year, and I generally see the following that show up at the seminars. Young married couples looking to come to the US and start their lives. I ask them, like, are you looking to do EB5 for yourself? No, it's my child in the US I want to do it for. Okay, so if 80% of the so-called India market is here in the US, I would say that probably because of the student dynamic and the ability to do concurrent filing, that 60% plus of the so-called China market is likewise here in the US as well. And so everyone
Supporting
has
Brian's point, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Suzanne.
I was just going to say, they do publish pending I-485 data just recently, and as of August, there are about 2,500 China I-485 pending for post-RIA priority dates and 1,400, about 1,500 Indian. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of Chinese and Indian
Absolutely.
Investors with 22 to 24 who are actually in the US.